everyone. I'm excited to be here today with Jeremy Shockley. And Jeremy is the CEO and founder of ELE. And ELE is a workflow management platform specializing in the optic industry, or at least that's where they are starting out here. And Jeremy will share more about that. But something unique that I actually haven't come across yet. So excited to hear more about the story. So Jeremy, thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Or
Jerry, sorry.
Yeah, you're Jeremy, I'm Jerry, and
we're reading the wrong part on the Zoom.
Yeah, but this is all part of what this interview is about. It's just a candid conversation about, who you are and what your company is doing. So Jeremy, start off by telling us a little bit about your background and, what brought you to the point of being the founder of ELE.
Sure. So it's like many entrepreneurial journeys, nonlinear. So I have a natural inclination toward technology and specifically computer technology, although that does extend into audio engineering as well as video and production. And that led me to work in Los Angeles for the Jim Henson Company in the year 2000. That's when I graduated high school and moved over there. And I was at the beginning of the digitization of the audio industry, which used to rely on 2-inch magnetic tape and $1 million consoles. And now you can basically have all of that horsepower in your laptop outside of the microphones and things that you would record with. So I saw what it took to take a legacy industry that had very specific and set ways of doing things, that was very successful, that was on the precipice of change and a new paradigm shift. From there, I took, the audio engineering took me to New York City, where I also migrated back into more pure technology consulting, and I worked for a 4-person firm that specialized in integrating Apple technology at the corporate level. So one of our largest clients is Unilever International, and we were responsible for all of their Apple technology worldwide, which means we had to deal with remote users in different companies. And because their corporate IT wouldn't touch the Apple stuff, they would just say, no, we won't look at that. We don't understand it. And we would say it's just Unix with a pretty face on it, and they still wouldn't acknowledge that. But we had to make sure that all of their specialized users, their graphic designers, their print designers that made the products so appealing to sell globally, integrated with their corporate policy and their assets could be backed up, and more importantly, understand the specific nature of those assets. So a font isn't just a font if you're an experienced designer. There are versions of them, and they matter when you pull up a legacy design to do a retro campaign or something like that. Getting the right fonts to the printer, depending on what type, whether you're doing a standee or a large billboard, these things are real problems that large corporations like Adobe try to solve through their Creative Cloud platform. So from there, oddly, I was exposed to a lot of very good food, and I'm a bit of a health nut. And that led me to create a company called Cashew Cow, where I turned cashew nuts into ice cream. And that was my first funded venture. I worked on it for 4 years, doing the proper, test with customers, and getting to the point where people would just leave their money and walk away, which is the best kind of sale, where there is no sale. They're just like, your product value is very clear, thank you and goodbye. And so I worked on that. We raised the $500,000, and this was in about 2013. And that led me to working at a lot of farmers markets for those customer tests, where I ended up making an acquaintance who connected me with my current co-founder, Isaac Trumper, who is a PhD optical scientist, still in his 20s, who can also write low-level code like Rust, Python, and JavaScript. So my co-founders are Isaac Trumper and Logan Graves, another PhD, a young one, and they were in an industry which makes the modern world possible. This call is impossible without optical engineers. They design the screens, the cameras, the fiber optics that connect the internet, the camera lenses, and so many other technologies like autonomous driving cannot exist without optical engineers. The microprocessors in our computers are done via a process called extreme ultraviolet lithography. That's an optical process. That industry is very much like the audio industry in the 2000s. It relies on decades-old software, which is woefully underpowered, and terrible outdated workflow processes. I'll give you an example of of what we've all experienced as people. I can't recall how many times I've accidentally sent the wrong version of a file to someone, whether it's through email or through a Slack message. And it's gotten a little better with things like Dropbox and Google Drive with version control. And software engineers laugh at us all because they start with Git. They start with version control and process management. Well, a billion-dollar telescope called the Magellan Telescope is currently under construction. It consists of 8 mirrors. Each mirror takes 20 tons of glass to make, 12 weeks to form, 12 weeks to cool off, just so you can ship it and measure it and see if you got it right. Turns out one of those mirrors, the most important one, the center one, was made incorrectly, and they sourced the problem back to somebody picking the wrong version of the design file from an email thread. So we're talking about the most precise industry relying on spreadsheets and emails just to get their workflow for billion-dollar telescopes. So that's where LEO saw a problem, and my background as a tech support type person saw this, whereas my co-founders see the optical science problems, the underpowered, the lack of AI in platforms, and simulations that take days to run if your laptop doesn't crash. It is an artisanal and boutique industry that makes the modern world possible. So there is an enormous digitization and modernization opportunity there. And that's how we come to the present day.
Super. Wow. Interesting background in what you're doing. And again, the specialized platform, addressing the optics industry seems unique to me. And I've seen a lot of startups and a lot of decks, and it's exciting to always see new things that you haven't seen before. So kudos to you and your team for coming up with this. So I'm going to ask you to do just a quick, like if somebody were to ask you to give them an elevator pitch, kind of cover the overview of, the problem, the solution, which you already shared some about, but the problem, solution, what the market's like, go-to-market strategy, that type of thing, and a short elevator pitch, and then we'll dig deeper and dive into that a little more.
Sure. Yeah. So in the optical engineering industry, as I mentioned before, it's a hard industry to pin down because it's horizontally integrated. So the optical engineers make possible our microprocessors, our camera lenses, cameras for self-driving car, LiDAR, solar panels. A lot of people don't understand that that's an optical technology, as well as defense applications. And all of those vertical markets rely on this horizontal market that has very outdated processes. And as I mentioned earlier, that involves emailing versions of design files to each other, relying on experts within the industry because they're the one that knows how to do this specific thing. Manufacturing is not integrated with design. Design is sort of in its own bucket, and it's all siloed and all of these things. So we've created a platform that, if you could think of an analogy, think of it like Dropbox, but one that understands optical science and physics. That's where we're starting with our beachhead. So it's about making sure that the manufacturing, the optical engineers themselves, and probably most importantly with this platform, the program managers, the people that connect the customer to the engineer to the manufacturing, they have the hardest job right now. So I don't know if you enjoy making PowerPoint slides, but imagine if you were a PhD optical scientist and you had to spend 5 to 10 hours a week building PowerPoint slides just to update your program manager so they can then synthesize an update for the customer. Our platform makes that a drag and drop. You can drag and drop your design file, your program manager gets a notification, and our system is so smart it can actually parse that optical design file, which you can't do on Dropbox or Google Drive. So not only do you get version control and source control, you get an easy to understand update that automatically reconciles the design against the customer requirements. Everybody's on the same page at the same time, and it's literally a drag and drop to do that, which is, there's a lot of magic going in, secret sauce behind the scenes to make that possible. But that's what we're doing. We're bringing the industry together in a single platform.
Okay, fantastic. So you mentioned a secret sauce. Is there an IP or anything that is pending on that, or?
Yes. So to our knowledge, we have built the first cloud-based optical physics science engine on the planet. Now, there may be some in stealth projects and things like that, but That's what Isaac Trumper, our CTO, has created, along with the help of our COO, who can also do software coding and understand the science behind it. Right now, optical science engines exist only on local workstations and at best can handle a couple cores. So you're talking about running simulations with billions and trillions of different points of light that will take weeks and may fail and overheat your laptop. When our platform is ready to scale, we'll be able to do that with unlimited resources because it's in the cloud. Now there isn't no solution is perfect in that sense. In the cloud, we've had to, like when the audio industry was digitizing, the same with the optics industry. ITAR, security compliance, is a big concern. So we were able to address that through using the AWS cloud.gov, which is an ITAR controlled environment. And like many entrepreneurs, you start to find traction when you get the right value proposition, the right set of conditions. And the second we did that, we stopped hearing objections about the cloud. Because the industry, again, is not in the cloud. So they were like, well, we'll never use that, even though they email each other design files.
Sure. So what's the go-to-market strategy then? How are you getting this in front of your potential clients and customers?
Well, wonderfully, because my two co-founders are deeply connected within the optics industry, our go-to-market strategy has been direct relationships with large companies. We can speak with engineers at Raytheon, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, but we're starting locally. We're based in Tucson, Arizona, and Tucson is a hub of optical science. The Wyant College of Optics at the University of Arizona is probably the world class in optical education. The professors do commercial work there. So that was our first pilot customer. They're currently using our platform now in various lab groups, and we're in negotiations to actually license the platform for the entire college, 500 seats, which is wonderful. The amount of concentration of engineers in a single building is unusual outside of academia. Secondly, we have a smaller design firm that does work for the military, Ruta Cardinal. They've just agreed to come onto our pilot platform. And then we reached out to a leader in the industry, Edmund Optics. They are unique in that they have a manufacturing and design paradigm within their company. So they will do custom design, but then you can also buy their off the shelves, and they manufacture it for it. So we get a wealth of data, and we are currently under NDA with them working on their data for our pilot program. So the short story is we're working with direct connections first, and we want to make sure we don't overwhelm our capacity to support these pilot users and integrate their feedback so the platform is truly matured through a proper forging process and isn't just our intuition, solely our intuition.
And what is your revenue model? Is this is it a licensing? Is it a SaaS based?
It's a SaaS platform, so we'll do annual seats, and right now we're doing at a pilot discount program, but we expect about $1,800 a seat annually per user. And in our estimations of the current workforce, we estimate there's a minimum about 55,000 program managers, customer portals, and engineers who would just use that platform at that point. So that's our beachhead market estimation. And we're talking just in the United States. There is a big optics community in Germany, Japan, South Korea. China is different. There's a lot more manufacturing there than there is design. So that's a market we would enter much further in the evolution of our company.
Okay, this is extremely interesting to me. So when you say that it's discounted pilot, does that mean that you are generating some revenue?
We have a minimal amount of revenue right now, but we, through one of our pre-seed investors, we're connected to a very experienced corporate salesperson who sold for IBM Watson and now sells for Philips, I believe. And he recommended that we always do a paid pilot program to put us through the process of dealing with legal, dealing with contracts. It doesn't matter what the discount or the revenue, it's about the process. So we started from day one with his advice. So
that's solid, great advice. So where are you at then as far as looking at officially what's your projection and milestones for launching, for going for full scale revenue, and talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the reason we're in a fundraising round, a lot of companies within this industry bootstrap it because you can make good revenue and you can take a decade. Well, we don't believe that there's a decade's worth of opportunity wait on this. The largest market leader in our space is a company called Ansys. They have a $33 billion market cap. They're a publicly traded company, and they have just recently acquired the market leader in optical engineering. It's a bit nuanced, but it's called sequential design software. And that is a company called ZMAX, which they just acquired. And they're on a big tear to acquire a bunch of companies. They are potentially a company that would be interested in acquiring us or a competitor. It's the classic Microsoft paradigm in the old days where it's like, either we own you or we'll destroy you. But no, I think the optics industry really does promote innovation. So there is a rising tide lifts all ships sentiment. So, but where we are is my two co-founders are playing the role of full stack developer, DevOps, sales, marketing, and they're PhD optical scientists who should be focusing on that. So we're really raising to bring what we learned from our pilot program and commercialize that in a stable, secure platform that we can then sell. And it is dynamically evolving. Whereas right now we simply would not have the experience. So that's our first hire, is really bringing in the software platform developer, not the science platform developers, so that we can commercialize that. And we're looking within this year to grow that revenue base rather significantly. Our first public outing will be in February at the Photonics and Optics Conference in San Francisco. It's called SPIE Photonics West. And traditionally, it's the largest one in the world. Now, I don't know if international travel will happen this year, but it fills up the entire Moscone Center in San Francisco. And it's remarkable when you think nobody knows about this industry. And then you go there and you're like, oh, Japan brought a delegation. Canada brings a delegation. It's big time. It's really fun. So we would be there, and our goal is to finish the pilot program within 3 to 6 months post funding, so that we have integrated and have a mature platform that people can just go to our website and sign up to and start generating revenue.
Okay, and the raise then, what type of runway are you looking at for this raise then?
Yeah, so this raise will
and how much is the raise? I'm sorry.
The raise, we're looking at $1 million raise, and there's potential some room for some oversubscription in there, but we're looking at $1 million raise, and the vast majority of those funds will be HR burn for our software development team. So we don't have inventory. We're not doing any sort of hard tech like that. So that burn will give us a 12-month burn, give or take 3 or 6 months based on revenue projections, but we don't expect to be revenue positive within that year. There's going to be a lot of development work and outreach, and the sales cycles can be tricky with this industry depending on if we're dealing with a customer that has government contracts. So it's a weird trickle-down effect where the government cycle may affect a private company that we're then licensing to. But so far, we've seen once we demo the platform, we usually are on at least to the pilot program within a couple weeks.
Okay, fantastic. So what would you expect then? What's your projection for being, getting into even projecting out? And then, of course, as always, it's always a projection when you're looking at companies that are, at the stage that you're at. But what are you looking at as far as a targeted date for cash flow positive? And what would you expect to see then as far as growth and potential exit timeframe?
Sure. Within the first 2 years, we would expect the platform, which we call it Spark. That's our process management platform, and that one is going to have your high SaaS margins on it, and it's our first product. And we believe that will be revenue positive by year 2. In and of itself, it's specific development, and we believe we could have at least 5 to 10% of that $100 million market within 2 to 3 years. And that would be the purely just going after the process management slice, not the actual design and engineering slice, which we believe will take another raise to be able to address that at scale, which is when you start getting into the physics and the science as think of it as a CAD platform, but for optical engineering.
So that would be looking more like into a Series A or
correct,
something like that.
Correct. Yes, this raise we are specifically focusing on commercialization of our process management platform Spark and making it self-sustaining. But it is really, I don't think Trojan horse is the correct analogy here. But there is no aggregate data within our industry. It's very frustrating. And without aggregate data, you cannot train neural networks in AI. Our platform becomes the key for making that possible. And any design suite in the future that does not leverage neural networks for designing optics will be an antique. And so that's really where our A round will start to focus, is we'll have this platform with this incredible amount of decades worth of data aggregated that we can understand and then train our neural networks. So that'll give us a competitive advantage that simply can't be replicated unless you have the data.
Okay, fantastic. You can see your kind of passion and your love and knowledge for what you're doing, and that's very clear and evident. So let me ask you, what are you've already done a pre-seed round,
Yes.
from what you mentioned. What are some of the pain points or roadblocks that you've ran into when it comes to funding?
Yeah, well, our pre-seed round was lovely because we knew enough accredited investors that were in our close circle to be able to test the idea, test the waters. We did a convertible note, so we made sure that it was the right balance for us and the right type of instrument to use at that time. And the first obstacle is no one knows what we're talking about. And traditional pitches, especially if you're coached to pitches, avoid education and explanation. And they're like, well, do a market analysis. Okay. No one has done that in our industry. Even the information bodies like SPIE, OSA, and the National Photonics Caucus, which exists now, is a big initiative in Congress. They cannot give you good data on what the revenue is for the engineering software for the market. It's very top down. There's $2 trillion worth of photonics-enabled products made every year. Okay, great. Now, how do we talk about the people who build tooling and manufacturing? It's not well understood. So that's a challenge for us as a business that we've had to aggregate and even commission a few of our own internal studies on. So that's a big one there. So we try to say in our pitch, this isn't possible. Look around you. Everything in your life, not just your eyeglasses, but every light in the room was designed by an optical engineer in software. All your LEDs. Your car doesn't drive without an optical engineer because of your backup camera and the chips that are inside of it. So that has helped when we connect it to a practical thing. And then another side, because that aggregate data is murky, is we've talked to VCs that were a great fit. They thought we were an epic team and they didn't see venture scale. So they're looking at it, they're like, well, maybe we're not right for you because we're really looking for this multiple of exit. And if we start out with a modest $500 million market opportunity, that sometimes appeals to angels and, family firms. But a VC would say, well, there's not enough gain to offset my risk because 90% of these things that I'm investing are going to fail and I'm going to look like a genius for the 10% that average out that's successful. But the real key is that the market opportunity. So I hearken back to my last name. My last name is Shockley, and any engineering fan understands that name as being one of the co-inventors of the transistor. And Shockley Semiconductors is the official home of Silicon Valley. There's a sign where the building used to be there. And the fundamental use of light as our technology of the future is the opportunity. It will supplant semiconductors and electronics because we are reaching the physical end of semiconductors and electronics. There's no more nanometers to go. So light-based microprocessors, for example, at scale, when produced for the same computational power, they use 60% less energy and they're 10 times faster in transmission of data. So imagine that at a cloud data center, from a carbon impact, from a processing impact, from a battery life impact on your smartphone. So that's really what you're investing in if you want to stick around for the long term. The short term, we could have a nice acquisition exit in 3 to 5 years from a company like Ansys, PTC out of Boston. We're in talks with them. They have the cloud CAD platform. They would love the optical side so they could have the full stack glued together. And an acquisition there, which would be a nice 10x, 20x, 30x return. But if you want to stick it out, the opportunity in optics and photonics is the same as in the 70s and the 80s with semiconductors.
Fantastic. It's wonderful speaking with you. If someone wants to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way to connect with you, Jeremy?
Sure. You can just email me directly if you'd like. Shockley, Shockley, at ELE Optics, which is just ELE ELEOptics.com. You can reach our website. I'm happy if you'd like to call. That's fine as well. You could reach out to me directly via my phone number, which is area code 323-841-5288. And of course, the contact form on our website, ELEOptics.com, will get to us as well.
Okay, fantastic. And a lot of this information we'll have posted with the video. And, again, I appreciate your time. It's been fascinating and interesting learning more about what you're doing with ELEO. And I wish you the most success and the best in the future here. We look forward to hearing and seeing more about what you're doing.
Yes, thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.